Now let's take a look at the key concept. Remember that a population is the entire group of objects, people, animals, or plants, from which data can be collected. A sample is a subset of that population, a smaller group. When you ask a statistical question about a population, it is often more efficient to gather data from a sample of that population. And from that sample, we need to just ask a representative sample. That makes sure that we have the same characteristics as the entire population. Generating a random sample is one reliable way to produce a representative sample of a population. You can generate multiple random samples that are different, but that are each representative of the population. In other words, if I look here at the example, I have a population and it shows me people that are numbered from 1 to 12. In this example, the random sample selected person number 2, 5, 9, and 12. But another random sample could have asked every third person, or perhaps every even-numbered person. And each of those could have been considered a representative and random sample, but they would have been different from the random sample initially generated. Now I'd like for you to try questions 4 and 5. See if you can determine the population or the sample for each of those questions, and then come back and check your answers. In question number 4, what is the population of this study? In other words, who should the health club manager ask? Because what is his or her population? In this case, it would be all health club members. In number 5, what would be a representative sample in this situation? Because the teacher has a total of 120 students in 4 different classes, he or she would need to ask students in each class he or she would need to ask both boys and girls, and he or she would need to ask an equal number of students from each class. And perhaps that number, to make up that sample, would need to be at least 40 students. Why 40? Well, in this case, that's about a third of his population, and it would give him about 10 students from each class to ask. Now let's try to do the same kind of work with populations and samples on questions 7 through 12. Come back and we'll check them one at a time as you finish each. For question 7, the sample is the 15 workers selected to participate in the survey. The population actually consists of the 200 workers. In question number 8, the sample consists of the 4 people selected to win a prize. The population consists of all the spectators who purchased tickets to attend the game. In question 9, the population of this survey is all the customers at the supermarket. In question 10, The store can choose a representative sample of trainees by listing all of those 400 sales associate trainees in alphabetical order and then number the list. After they've done that, they can select every 10th person off the list to get a sample that would be equal to 40 people. In question 11A, the sample are the 30 passengers who went to the magic show. In part B, the population is all 652 passengers aboard the cruise ship. For question number 12, the population is all 120 employees at the landscape company. The sample, though, can be a bit trickier. There's not just one right answer, but the best way to obtain a sample is to make sure that you have an alphabetical list of your employees and perhaps choose every 6th person to ask. That would give you a sample size of 20 employees out of the 120 that work at the company. That sample size is adequate enough to get an idea of whether or not it represents the entire population. Next, we're going to try a few more questions, specifically questions 13, 15, and 17 from this next part. Number 13. A bag contains 6 yellow marbles and 18 red marbles. If a representative sample contains 2 yellow marbles, then how many red marbles would you expect it to contain? Well, in this case, if we know that the sample is a representative sample, then that means it represents the entire bag of marbles and all the different colors inside. So if the sample contains 2 yellow and there are 6 yellow marbles in the bag and 18 red marbles, how many red marbles could we expect? In this case, you can use a proportion to solve. So 6 yellow out of 18 red is the same as 2 yellow out of how many red? In this case, the answer would be 6 red marbles is what we should expect. Because this is a representative sample, it represents the entire population. In other words, all the items in the bag. In this case, we use proportional reasoning, and you can divide both parts of that ratio by 3 in order to get the representative sample numbers. Proportional reasoning is a good strategy to use to take a sample and project that onto the entire population. Now I'd like for you to try numbers 15 and 17 on your own. Come back and check your answers as you finish them. For question 15, Yolanda's error was that a sample will never contain the entire population, as mentioned here in the problem. Instead, her sample size is the 40 students that she surveyed right here. In question 17, all the students in David's school make up the population. And last but not least, let's take a look at questions 22 and 23. Again, I'd like for you to try these first on your own and then come back when you're all finished and check your answers. For question 22, there are only 2 options that would produce a representative sample. First, you could assign each house a number and use a random number generator to produce a list of houses for the sample. In other words, a random number generator would just simply randomly pick numbers from a hat, so to speak, based on the number of houses that you have in that hat. The other one is the 4th statement down. You could list all the house numbers on slips of paper and draw at least 20% of the numbers out of a box. This is similar to the random number generator. What you don't want to do is select houses that meet only certain criteria, at least 3 trees in the front yard, people that you know, or only the houses that have shutters. Those will restrict the houses that are in your list and really have nothing to do with the color of houses that you're looking to try to find more out. In question 23, the key word here is that this is a national survey. In other words, it needs to cover all of the middle school students in all of the states of the nation. So the sample that best represents the entire population of middle school students is a group of 739 students in different middle school grade levels from various states. Okay? This represents students from all across the nation. So remember, a population represents the entire group or calls out an entire group of something. A sample is always a smaller group that's made up of all the different characteristics in the population. So when you're looking to identify a population in a sample, you need to think about, first of all, who makes up the group that you're trying to define. That's your population. And out of that population, how many people would you need to ask in order to get a good idea of what everybody in the population would say? That would be your sample.